Noteworthy Lesbians by Rhonda Webster. The goal of this work is to mention lesbians that have made significant contributions to lesbian history. It is impractical to list all noteworthy lesbians, as there have been many, especially recently. I made a particular effort to include minorities as well as those with disabilities. In my work, there is an implied assumption that women living 40 or more years ago who defined themselves as bisexual may have only done so for self-protective reasons. In other words, I believe there is a good chance that those same women in today's climate would define themselves only as lesbian. Sappho. Sappho was a teacher and lesbian poet on the Greek island of Lesbos. She came from an aristocratic family and wrote her poetry mainly about loving women. Although called poetry, they were actually songs accompanied by music. Unfortunately, the church destroyed much of Sappho's work because it contained erotic lesbian imagery. The Queen of Sweden. Christina rejected the designated role of a woman during her 22-year reign as Sweden's queen. Her conversion to Catholicism and her refusal to marry ultimately caused her to give up the throne, though, and move to Rome. Anne Lister. Anne Lister, who lived in West Yorkshire, England, was considered by many to be the first known lesbian, mainly due to her writings that were preserved after her death. Here is one. I am certainly attentive to her, but cautiously, without any impropriety that could be laid hold of. Yet my manners are certainly peculiar, not at all masculine, but rather softly gentlemanlike. I know how to please girls. Charlotte Cushman. Charlotte was an American actress and superstar. She was considered to be a nonconforming lesbian who worked on stages in the U.S., Britain, and Rome throughout the mid-19th century. She played as Lady Macbeth and also as Romeo in Romeo and Juliet. Florence Nightingale. Florence was a nurse, writer, and social reformer. Raised in wealth, her family flatly rejected her intention to become a nurse, since many nurses at the time were uneducated drunks and prostitutes. However, once her family sent her off on a European vacation to forget about it, Florence ran across nuns running a hospital in Germany, and the family finally relented. Historians report Florence was deeply religious, turned down 2 marriage proposals by men, never married, and in her writings she acknowledged that she slept with women. Gertrude Stein. Gertrude was an American novelist, poet, playwright, and art collector. She was a friend of Picasso and muse to Hemingway. She had her first erotic awakening around the age of 29, but it did not end well, and she appeared to have fled from it as well as from medical school, leaving the U.S. for Paris, France, where she spent the rest of her life. Gertrude met Alice B. Toklas when she was 33 years old, and they shared nearly 42 years together. As a Jew, Stein's political associations have been very controversial. She condemned Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, yet supported the Vichy regime that collaborated with Nazi Germany and supported the Holocaust. Stein also endorsed Adolf Hitler for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1934. This left many people wondering, how in the world could Gertrude and her partner Alice have survived as Jewish lesbians living in an openly lesbian relationship at a time when trainloads of Jews were being shipped off to concentration camps? No matter if you are simply interested in her many great books. She wrote the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas, and after Gertrude died, Alice found a hidden work and published it, called QED, which was later called As It Was, the true story about Gertrude's first love in America. Gertrude and Alice doted on their beloved poodle named Basket, whose successor, Basket II, comforted Alice in the years after Gertrude's death at the age of 72. Jane Addams. Jane Addams was considered the mother of social work. In 1931, she won the Nobel Peace Prize for her activism. Jane also co-founded Hull House in 1889, which was a place where immigrants of diverse communities could gather. Jane spent nearly all of her adult life with women, having at least two long-term same-sex relationships, one with Mary Rosette Smith, which lasted for 40 years. Lillian Wald. Lillian was a nurse, social worker, and women's rights activist. She was born into a life of privilege, yet she dedicated her life to improving the lives of others by founding the Henry Street Settlement for Immigrants and by initiating the first public school nursing program around 1902. After her death, personal letters were recovered that indicated Wald had both romantic and platonic relationships with the women she worked with. Eleanor Roosevelt. Wife of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, the First Lady of the World, Eleanor, promoted many women's interests. After she caught Franklin having an affair with his secretary, the two agreed to a loveless marriage, and then she met journalist Lorena Hickok, whom she called Hick. The two became extremely close, with Eleanor soon finding a way for Hick to leave her job at the Associated Press and come live in the White House. Over the years, Eleanor and Hick exchanged over 3,000 letters, lacking any explicit sexual innuendo, but full of comments about longing, affection, and wanting and needing to be with each other. Dr. Margaret Chung, many referred to as Mom. Margaret was a first-generation Chinese American who became a physician and surgeon, founding one of the first Western medical clinics in San Francisco's Chinatown in the 1920s. The FBI files on her clearly suspected her of being a lesbian, as their notes state she was never married and lived with another unmarried female partner. Margaret was also a friend to open lesbians, but many of the first female doctors had to toughen up. I used to be ladylike and deferential, but found it didn't pay. Everywhere I was stepped on. Now I treat them rough. They lap it up, said Dr. Margaret Chung. Virginia Woolf. Virginia was an English writer seeking new forms of expression. She produced lasting and significant interpretations of how women are viewed in society. Her love for women was a primary, compelling, and erotic force in her life, and this affection for women far outweighed her affection for men. Her best novels were To the Lighthouse in 1927 and Mrs. Dalloway, also Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Plagued by depressive and manic episodes and institutionalized several times, at the age of 59, Virginia ended her life by filling her pockets with stones and walking into a river. Hannah Gluck, who was known as Peter. Gluck was a British painter who was considered ahead of her time. She dressed as an extreme butch and called herself Peter. One of her paintings was selected for the cover of The Well of Loneliness, a lesbian novel by British author Radcliffe Hall, that was first published in 1928. Amrita Sher Gill. Amrita was an Indian painter who was called one of the greatest avant-garde women artists of the early 20th century. She was a bisexual who had many affairs with both men and women. Amrita's painting career got an early start since she began painting lessons at the age of 8, but she lived a short life, reportedly dying at the young age of 28 from a failed abortion at the hands of her husband, who was a doctor. Her works include Two Women, which was thought to be a painting of herself and her female lover. Frida Kahlo. Frida was a Mexican painter who depicted female experience and form. She became best known for her self-portraits. Frida was disabled from polio at the age of 6, and also from being speared through the abdomen with a handrail during a horrible bus accident at the age of 18. Some of her paintings include people, often herself, with disabilities. A self-described bisexual, she often wove her sexuality into her work. Frida was known for her fierce pride in her Mexican heritage and became a women's rights advocate. Radcliffe Hall, known as John. John was an English poet and author known best for The Well of Loneliness, a novel about sexual self-identity and lesbianism. It is a self-biographical novel about a young woman coming to terms with her lesbian identity, and perhaps more to the point, her maleness. Her book was banned outright in 1928 when first published in England, and remained so until 1953, which was sadly long after John's death. Radcliffe Hall did publish other books, but none containing controversial material. Gladys Bentley. Gladys was a talented American blues singer, pianist, and entertainer whose male manner of dress caused her to go from being ostracized as a child to being highly favored in New York's gay speakeasy bars, where she openly flirted with women in the audience. She dressed as a male and spoke raunchy language, but never pretended to be a man. Although she married a white woman in a civil ceremony, when the hardships of the McCarthy era came along, she started wearing dresses, claimed to have married two men, one of which denied it, and she even claimed to be cured by taking female hormones. Rosalie, or Rose, Bomberger. Rose was a Filipino woman working in a brush manufacturing factory who loved to dance. However, public same-sex holding of hands, hugging, or dancing was illegal, making this impossible for gay people. So Rose formed a private club which first began in her own house in 1955. This later became the Daughters of Bilitis, which morphed into the first lesbian rights groups in the United States. However, as a working woman of color, Rose preferred a more private group, and so she left. Barbara Gettings. Barbara was known as the mother of the gay rights movement, since her battle for the rights of lesbians began 10 years before Stonewall, at a time when it was dangerous to be out. She organized the New York chapter of the Daughters of Bilitis from 1958 to 1963, and she was the editor of the latter magazine. Barbara was instrumental in getting the American Psychiatric Association to stop classifying homosexuality as a mental illness. She also worked toward getting libraries to carry gay literature. In 1964, Barbara was on the cover of the Time magazine. Josephine Baker. Josephine was one of the first black women to star in a major film. Her great beauty was remarked upon by both Picasso and Hemingway. Baker was one of the few women who spoke beside Martin Luther King Jr., and she was the only female speaker at the March on Washington in 1968, where she honored women civil rights activists. In France, Josephine received the Legion of Honor, which was France's highest award, and she reportedly had sex with both men and women, and she adopted over 12 multiracial children. Storm de la Verre. Storm was a fierce defender of lesbian women around the days of Stonewall in New York's Greenwich Village. It was stated, she dressed androgynously and carried a gun, stalking the streets of Lower 7th and 8th Avenues to protect lesbians from violence or discrimination. It was reported by police and many eyewitnesses that Storm threw the first punch during the Stonewall Uprising of June 27, 1969. The uprising at Stonewall was an important turning point in gay history because gay patrons got fed up with the police raids that were accompanied by beatings, humiliation, and arrests, which often caused job loss. In June 28th of 1969, this became a breaking point because gays did not give in. They fought back. The Stonewall skirmish gave rise to later riots and the demand from gays for police to leave them alone. Fanny Flagg, known as Patsy. Patsy, Patricia Neal, wrote Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. She struggles with dyslexia and reports, I still can't spell. Patsy has never married and is an out lesbian, and had a public relationship with the iconic activist and writer Rita Mae Brown in the later 1970s. In her book, Fried Green Tomatoes, the lesbian relationship was more obvious than it was in the movie Fried Green Tomatoes. Dejuna Barnes. Dejuna was a journalist, playwright, poet, and novelist. She wrote one of the earliest lesbian novels published by an American writer called Nightwood in 1936. Dejuna intentionally got herself arrested along with other women that were protesting for women's rights, and she endured being force-fed, as was commonly happening to these women, so that she could write about it. Esther Newton. Esther is an American cultural anthropologist who performed pioneering work on the customs and culture of lesbian and gay communities in the United States. In 1968, she published her dissertation, The Drag Queens, A Study in Urban Anthropology. She also published Mother Camp, Female Impersonators in America, Fire Island, 60 Years in America's First Gay and Lesbian Town, and Margaret Mead Made Me Gay, Personal Essays, Public Ideas. Alma Route Song, under the pen name of Isabel Miller. Alma was a writer who served in the Navy during World War II. She was inspired by a real-life painter who fell in love with a girl from a farming family around 1816. As this couple bravely left their homes and bought a farm to live together in love. Under the pen name of Isabel Miller, Alma originally published A Place for Us. Then McGraw published it in 1972, retitling this book Patience and Sarah, which was awarded the Stonewall Book Award. Patience and Sarah is a delightful first lesbian historical novel. Audre Lorde. Audre was a writer and civil rights activist with Afro-German women in the 1980s. She was a central figure in many liberation movements and activist circles, including feminism, civil rights, black cultural movements, and struggles for LGBTQ equality. When she began a 14-year-long struggle with cancer, Audre decided to write about it to help other black women similarly affected by cancer avoid the loneliness and uncertainty that she endured. Rita Mae Brown. Rita is an American feminist writer. One of her first works, Ruby Fruit Jungle, is considered a coming-of-age autobiographical novel. Rita criticized feminist groups for treating lesbians of lesser importance than other women, and in 1971 she co-founded the Furies, a lesbian feminist newspaper collective that stated that heterosexuality was the root of all oppression. She worked for the National Organization for Women and joined the Lavender Menace. She has received numerous awards. Brown holds a Ph.D. in literature from Union Institute University in 1976 and a doctorate in political science. Billie Jean King. Billie Jean is a professional tennis player who elevated the status of women's professional tennis. At the Battle of the Sexes, she took on Bobby Riggs, a former Wimbledon tennis champion, who, at the age of 55, bragged that he could beat both of the top two women's tennis players, who were close to 25 years younger than him. He did beat Margaret Court, but in 1973, King, who was fed up with sexist treatment, not only won against Riggs, she dominated the entire game. Billie Jean King remained a closeted lesbian until she was publicly outed by an angry ex-lover. There was a swift response from her sponsors, who pulled their support, resulting in a huge financial loss for King. Elaine Noble. Elaine was the first openly gay person elected to the Massachusetts state legislature in 1975. However, this came with a personal cost. She endured bomb threats and vandalism, was spit on by her constituents, and had excrement left on her desk. This reportedly strained her relationship with writer Rita Mae Brown, and the women parted company in 1976. Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon. Del and Phyllis were feminist lesbian activists and partners in love for more than 50 years. They founded the Daughters of Bilitis in San Francisco, which was the first lesbian rights organization in the United States. They were the first same-sex couple to receive a marriage license. This was invalidated 6 months later. But when legalized in 2008, they were married again. Martin died just 2 months after their second marriage. Colonel Marguerite Cammermeyer. Marguerite, a 26-year Army nurse and Vietnam veteran, received the Bronze Star as a combat hospital nurse. She earned her Ph.D. in nursing in 1991 and yet was discharged in 1992 for being a lesbian. As a result, Marguerite became one of the highest-ranking officers to challenge the Pentagon's position that homosexuality was incompatible with military service. Suddenly, to her surprise, Marguerite found herself one of the most famous lesbians in America. This was overturned in 1994, yet between 1993 And 2011, when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, more than 13,000 gays and lesbians had been forced out of the military. Lily Tomlin. Lily is a versatile American actress, comedian, writer, and singer and producer. Her performance in Robert Altman's film Nashville earned her an Academy Award nomination. She also has won multiple Emmys, 2 Tonys, and a Grammy. In 2003, she was honored with the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. Lily admitted her sexuality in 2015 and is known for her feminist and LGBTQ activism. Rosie Jones. Rosie is a British comedian, writer, and actor, and LGBTQ activist, proudly describing herself as both gay and disabled. She has had to deal with cerebral palsy for over 3 decades. The online abuse she has received reflects the need for changes, as disability continues to be the most underrepresented area of diversity across the media. Despite online abuse by ableist trolls, Rosie persists as both a comedian and spokesperson for the disabled, ranking high on the Pride Power list. Leanne Pittsford. Leanne is a technological American entrepreneur and activist. She is the founder of Lesbians Who Tech and Allies, the largest community of LGBTQ technologists in the world media. Sally Ride. Not to be confused with Sally K. Ride, a teacher who was killed during a 1983 rocket launch. Sally Ride was a physicist and the first U.S. woman in space. She served as a role model for women everywhere, often making presentations beside her female partner, Tam O'Shaughnessy, a children's science writer and former professional tennis player. Ride advocated a greater focus on science and math in schools. It was not until she died of pancreatic cancer in 2012 that her partner of 27 years was publicly acknowledged. Sarah Gilbert. Sarah is an actor, producer, and talk show host who played the part of Darlene on the TV program Roseanne, for which she received 2 Primetime Emmy Award nominations. Sarah came out as a lesbian in 2010 and is an advocate for LGBTQ rights. Adele Roberts. Adele is a DJ, broadcaster, and athlete who has been an enthusiastic and supportive contributor to the LGBTQ rights. She ranked 8th on the 2024 Pride Power list. Adele is a bowel cancer survivor who set the Guinness World Record as the fastest female with an ileostomy. Halia Tissanhajani. If I mispronounced it, sorry. Halia is an Aboriginal photographer, filmmaker, writer, and educator, known for her photographic work rooted in visual Native American sovereignty. One of her photographs is called "The Promises Were So Sweet" in 2010. Halia is a self-identified lesbian. Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen is a writer, comedian, and gay rights activist who chose a very public coming out on her show called Ellen in 1997. Despite a slew of awards, including 64 daytime Emmys for a daytime talk show, after Ellen came out on her show, ABC faced a storm of criticism, and many sponsors pulled their support, which resulted in the canceling of her show in 1998. However, Ellen hardly became destitute or went away. In 2020, she had a net worth of $370 million and is considered to be the highest paid entertainer in the world. In 2015, she was named the 50th most powerful woman in the world by Forbes, and she came second on the World Pride Power list. Jane Lynch. Jane is an actress, author, and comedian who often plays the part of a mean or bitchy woman. She is reportedly 6 feet tall and kinder than the characters she often portrays. She realized when she was gay at the age of 14 and started coming out in college. Jane lives with her wife Jennifer and their 3 rescue dogs. Melissa Etheridge. Melissa is an American singer, songwriter, musician, and guitarist. She won her first Grammy for Best Female Rock Vocal Etheridge very publicly announced that she is a lesbian in 1993 at an inauguration ball for President Bill Clinton. She is a gay rights activist, a breast cancer survivor, and she has had the heartache of losing one of her two sons to opioid addiction. Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie is an American actress, producer, and talk show host. She has been an outspoken advocate for lesbian rights and gay adoption issues, and is a foster and adoptive mother. She was an actor on the movie A League of Our Own. Rosie has won many awards, especially for outstanding talk show host during the Rosie O'Donnell Show. She developed the nickname Queen of Nice, as well as a reputation for philanthropic efforts. Although Bush and Trump may not agree, as she has been a quite outspoken Democrat. Jodie Foster. Jodie is an American actress and filmmaker. She has won 2 Academy Awards, 3 BAFTA Awards, and 3 Golden Globe Awards. In 2013, after it was rumored that she would be publicly outed, Jodie came out for all the world to see at the 70th Golden Globe Awards after receiving the Cecil B. DeMille Award. However, lesbians were quick to note Jodie used the words loud and proud, but never once uttered the words lesbian or gay. Jodie's legal name is Alicia Christian. Wanda Sykes. Wanda is an American stand-up comedian, actress, and writer. She was awarded the Primetime Emmy Award in 1999 for her work on The Chris Rock Show. And in 2004, Entertainment Weekly named Sykes as one of the 25 funniest people in America. Wanda is openly gay with a committed partner and twin daughters. Rachel Maddow. Rachel has a PhD in political science and has won numerous awards as a liberal commentator. She was the first openly gay woman to host a primetime television show and she was an avid AIDS activist. Rachel stated, "The best thing about coming out of the closet is that nobody can insult you by telling you what you've just told them." Okay, she's not a lesbian, but she is respected by lesbians. Headline regarding Dolly Parton. She loves and does not judge the LGBT community. How we are is who we are. Headlines on The Advocate. 8 times Dolly Parton cemented her status as an LGBTQ and plus icon. States Dolly, "I am not gay, but if I were, I would be the first one running out of the closet." Lily Whoopi Goldberg, our honorary lesbian. Her legal name is Karen Elaine Johnson. Whoopi is a heterosexual woman who has been so supportive of the gay community that rumors about her being a lesbian constantly abound. Since Whoopi has also had no problems playing lesbian parts on television, she occasionally is asked, and therefore corrects the assumptions. Whoopi's support for LGBTQ people and her lack of homophobia do not reflect her personal life. Go Whoopi. Da 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 da! Ladies, announcing a book and a blog. I have a new lesbian novel coming out with Sapphire Books Publishing entitled Not Hers to Possess by Rhonda Webster. This is a story about a kidnapping in the lesbian community. To find out what will become of the woman who is taken and what romances may spring up on the periphery, please buy my book from Amazon. You can simply Google Amazon LGBTQ books. Rhonda's blog is called lesbian-cafe.com, and you can go there by just clicking on the hyperlink at the top of this page. This is a free place where women from the lesbian community can read about mini trips, mainly around Colorado, dog, cat, and chicken stories, do-it-yourself fix-it ideas, and other topics of interest. Enjoy, from my family to yours, and thank you for spending this time with me.